Hello and welcome to this episode of the Down the Pub podcast. I am your host, Anthony Abbott. It's been another crazy week in the CPL. We've had Palma Ka leave Pacific, James Merriman take over, Lucas McNaughton, fair play to him, has shown TFC what he's made of and has got himself a move there to the MLS. We've had Atletico Ottawa sign half of the CPL. We've had a couple of signings in Halifax. Yeah, it just seems to be like for such a young league, there always seems to be something happening, and it kind of keeps everything interesting and keeps everybody on our toes. I want to give a special shout out to Dylan Lawrence from Halifax Wanderers for the teasers that he's doing for the Wanderers Wednesdays. It's kept all of the supporters in Halifax on tenterhooks trying to work out what's happening and who's coming in. So great job, Dylan. Keep it up. I also want to give a special shout out to very talented artist James Jansen here in Halifax, who helped create and design the new logo for the show. He did a fantastic job. So if you need anything done, don't be afraid to reach out to James. We will have some new merch available pretty soon. This week's show is an extended version of our new section, The Last Call. I am joined on this episode by Chris Duffin and Josh MacKenzie of the Northern Corridor Supporters Group. They're a support group of York United that sprang up in March of last year. I just want to get a lowdown on what's happening in York in terms of footy and how the supporters group started, where the lads see the supporters group going in the future, and what a match day looks like. Because when we don't really travel to away games here in Canada, so it's kind of nice to see what's happening, because a lot of the TV angles don't help us to see what's happening in the crowd. So it was really good to catch up and see how they're interacting with the club itself and the fan base in York. If you want to follow the show, you can certainly do that on Instagram and Twitter at Down the Pub Pod is our handle. If you're an Apple listener, please review, give us a 5-star if you can. If you can't and you want to give us some feedback, please do so. Just leave us a review. And if you're a Spotify person, give us a 5-star review. If you'd like to be on the show, just reach out to the show on the social medias and we can set something up. It's always good to reach out to new people. As I said, the last call is for you guys. So if there's anything you want to talk about in the world of footy, whether you're a fan of a CPL team, you're a Premier League fan, if you're a Tottenham fan and you want to see the back of Daniel Levy because he's destroying our club, just reach out and we'll work something out. So here is the two lads from the Northern Corridor. Enjoy the show and cheers.
All right, Desperados, last call.
I'm being serious. No, you see, I'm talking facts here. I don't do if, buts and maybes. I do absolutes. And, if your aunt had balls, she'd be your uncle. But she doesn't, so she's not. You know what I'm trying to say?
Why are you talking? Have I finished? United couldn't mount a challenge even at the end of the game there when we're chasing them. It was just absolutely pathetic from Manchester United. It was absolutely pathetic today.
Welcome to this episode of the Down the Pub podcast. On this episode, I am joined at the bar by Chris Duffin, who's the founder of the Northern Corridor Supporters Group, who support York United. And we have day one York United supporter, Josh MacKenzie. Welcome to the show, lads.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's always nice to find out how the league is so spread out all over the country. It's very difficult to know what's happening in each little pocket of the country where the teams are. So it's kind of nice to catch up and see what's happening in York. So the first question I have for you is, in a city with obviously very prominent sports teams, how and why did you both become York United supporters?
I wanted a connection to a local club. I wanted to feel something a little bit more than TFC. TFC always to me was a little bit more commercialized and a little bit more forced. And when the CPL came along, I got really excited, and being from the York region, it was something that I could identify with a little bit more. Because Toronto has a lot of people who are from York region that tend to say they're from Toronto, and I never was one of those people. I was from York region, and I wanted an identity, and finally a club came around that would represent that for me.
Nice. And have you always been a football fan, or
Always, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Were you like a TFC fan, or did you follow the Premier League back in England? Or
I did follow TFC from the start of that, and I do a Prem team with Arsenal, and yeah.
what is it with Canadians and Arsenal? It's disgusting. It really is. So yeah, you're done. It's going to mute you for the rest of the call. Chris, what about yourself, man?
Yeah, I mean, well, the long story short for me is I grew up in a hockey family, pretty typical Canadian, and I'm the first football supporter in my family that I'm aware of, other than, whoever would have been back from the UK, generations ago. And I just got disenfranchised with hockey. It just started to bore me. It just really cookie cutter, copycat. And so I just took the plunge one day. And, obviously it started with the English stuff. It's easy stuff to access. Aston Villa supporter. I decided jumping on a, bandwagon for a bigger club that was already successful just didn't have any value to it for me. Started following Villa the year they were relegated.
Nice.
But realized quickly that you don't get to have a connection, with a club because there's nothing local, right? For me, there was nothing there. And my wife and I moved back into York region after spending a few years north of here and found out about the club. And I was just thrilled that there'd be a local club in my backyard that I could follow, not to mention the Canadian layer that's there, for the Canadian content. And, that was it. That's all I needed. After a few years of learning about the sport and just kind of falling in love with it, across the board, knowing I'd have a club I could go to, and be there firsthand was just, it was just too good to be true. I never identified the TFC thing. Never living in Toronto proper, never really living inside the boundaries. It didn't really speak to me in any way. And, because this was in York region, it grabbed me right away.
So I definitely noticed that, like, you guys, like, really, the York region thing is a big thing for you guys. Like, you have your own kind of team now and you don't have to focus on TFC. So what's like in the York region? Like, is there much buzz around the team? Because it's very difficult, as I mentioned, for smaller teams, smaller kind of clubs like this to find a foothold in a huge city like that. And I know, like, you're not technically Toronto, but it is like, like here in Halifax, we don't have any other major sporting teams apart from the Moosehead. So that was easier for the Wanderers to kind of tap into the city here. So like, what's the buzz around the team and the actual York region itself?
I mean, from my perspective, man, that was a huge problem with the team at the start with the Y9. A lot of our fans were TFC fans and York fans. And so when you go to a game, if TFC had a game on slightly at the same time, half of the supporter section would just be at the TFC game. So I think that's one of the reasons for the rebrand. I don't really think that there's a huge amount of buzz around the team being a York region team. I think they're sort of pushing it a bit more of a Toronto sense. But that's why we're here, is to represent the region and make it loud.
Like it.
I think there was this thing too that I don't like rehashing it over and over again, but really I lived here for the first season and didn't even know there was a club until there was 2 games left in the year and they were on the road. So and that's the original regime that was in the first year from a business point of view, calling the shots. Some of those people have carried over with the current group and they're amazing at what they do, but the focus just, it almost seems like it had an, if you build it, they will come approach to that first group. And with, the sort of new direction of the leadership that's there now with the group, you're seeing, immediately you saw an increase on social media and those sorts of things going on, but I don't think it was marketed heavily enough in York region in the early days. And then you have the pandemic interrupting the second season during the rebrand. And to be fair, I think they haven't had time to get a lot of traction in the region to see how much buzz there really will be, just because of how uncertain everything's been.
Yeah, like things like this, stadium capacity being reduced and stuff, that doesn't help. Cause like from my perspective, like watching the games on TV, all you ever get to see is where the running track used to be. So you never
the woods.
Yeah, it's like there's a weird picket fence, and then it's like, it's like you're watching like a game in a prison or something. And then it's the same with it's the same with like Atletico Ottawa and stuff like that. The same with Winnipeg. It's just I think like One Soccer has an awful lot of things like that. I think the clubs need to talk a bit more to them and say like, listen, we need cameras facing you guys, because like you hear some drums in the background and then you don't see anything, right? And you just think like, is there anybody there? You know,
if you go on like the sites, like if you were to go on, there's a few photographers and look, we're there and we're putting on a show. But yeah, it's a beautiful stadium for what it is, for one stand. It's really nice. And a lot of people who have never been there or only seen a TV show, they're like, wow, like I didn't realize it was this great a facility. But I've sat in the stands with football friends of mine who are in, for example, the TV business. And they're like, we could easily just put a scaffold on the other side, put a camera on it, turn it around and face it the stand.
Yeah, it's so random. So I mean, like for yourself then, Chris, like, how did you go about, like, it's one thing being a fan, creating a supporters group is a whole different beast. So how did you go about starting that? And then Jay, like, how did you, get involved yourself and how did you become a member too?
Well, Jay, I've known Jay since York 9.
Josh, sorry, I call
Jay. Josh, yeah. So, but I mean, there's obviously when it was York 9, there was an original supporters group involved who were extremely passionate about York 9 as a club with that name. And true to their word, after the rebrand, they weren't interested. And it's difficult, it's difficult to be in those shoes because that was their identity. They were very tied into that brand and that identity, and it was important to them. And, so, it kind of left a void there, and I appreciate that. But for me, it's also having children, being a football fan, the idea of there being no backing for the club at all. When I was sitting here on a Saturday in March, I think it was, and I just came up with the idea for the name, and I just created an Instagram page and just started putting stuff out. And then slowly it just started to get reactions and people started reaching out, and it just kind of, it snowballed really when people at the club figured out it was me. And then I got a message from Josh and he's like, hey, is that you? And it just sort of, that's where the connections started to be made. I just wanted to see what reaction there was. And, but it was important that it was York region centric, because you could tell that the Toronto market's important. The club wanted to and needs to tap into, especially that northeast corner of the city that's the furthest away from TFC's ground, and a lot of those communities are East York, North York, York, is the name of those individual communities within Toronto. But yeah, it was important to have something York centric. It was sort of what it was, and it just gathered momentum from there.
And Chris kind of, sorry, I was going to say, Chris kind of summed it up. Like, he was a York region guy, I was a York region guy. We had kind of similar experiences. We saw each other in the supporter section and reached out to him and hopped on board.
So you kind of have the cooperation thing with the Centre of the Universe, who are another supporters group. So how did that collaboration kind of come about, and what sort of things you actually collaborate on?
The initial communication was, they've been around for a while. I guess they originally formed to try and convince there to be a CPL team in Toronto. And then they've sort of quietly been in the background and sort of followed along with it. And when the rebrand happened, they sort of became a little more prominent. And one of them, like, they commented on something I posted one time, cause it was sort of a surprise that we appeared out of nowhere, because we were kind of just suddenly there. And that's where the interaction started with a couple of the guys who were responsible for that. And the collaboration's kind of taken off from that day. They are very downtown Toronto, we're York region, so we kind of cover a lot of territory. Ideally, hopefully, sort of bridging those two fan groups together, especially on match day in the stands. That's really important for the atmosphere.
So are you guys like gonna like make flags together, like tifos and all that kind of stuff, or like what's the plan? Like obviously, like hopefully, like this year we're gonna have full stadiums again. So is that what kind of ideas you guys have to bring a little bit more noise to the York Line Stadium?
This is Josh's wheelhouse with the tifo. That's
yeah. I went to art school, so I definitely think that the tifos are going to be showing up every game. Hopefully, we can get the people to come out and paint them. And I do think that there might be a Save Tulsa Park banner showing up. from our good friend
Yeah.
Ronan.
Yeah. A bunch of us have taken on with Shelburne, it's sort of in camaraderie because, I mean, he's following our club as somebody who had a club growing up. And, there's a lot of parallels between those leagues. So that's kind of made a connection there. So ideally we can get them to catch on with us, but the TIFO is something we've talked about, trying to get it shared across. One of the things that has come up is, I know we floated the idea of a joint banner with them, when we went down to Hamilton and set our bus up. The whole team was the Benga bus. And so we've had thoughts about ideas like that being involved, and, the things that trying to tie TIFO into things that we've done as a large group. But at the same time, we want to represent our portion of the fan base as well, with some of that. So there's been some plans around that as well.
I love that idea of touching in with Shelbourne and stuff. That's kind of nice, a little side piece, and they'll probably make Ronan cry if he's ever do a TIFO. So I'm hoping to see that someday, because I grew up not far from Talca Park, and it was a big part of me growing up too. I've been there many times, and I've played once or twice in the ground, and to see it kind of go, it's development is one thing, but you can't just keep knocking down things that are important to communities,
Especially club history.
Yeah, exactly, and you guys will, obviously the club is new, but for those people, as you mentioned, the York 9 people, that meant something to them, right? And it's sometimes when stuff changes, you kind of lose people along the way, unfortunately. So have obviously hopefully you've got to go to some games when football was back. So what's a game day like for you guys? Or what's your build up? Do you go for beers beforehand? Do you set up some banners at the stadium? What's a game day look like?
We have a spot in a parking lot. It's there's no pub. There's no pubs, and there's nothing around open before a game comes at the university. So we all congregate at a TTC parking lot. So we sort of have a little section of our own, and everyone sort of pulls beers and hangs out beforehand. And then we usually do a march to the match from that spot. So we have our flags and we have our smoke, and we'll go walk to the match through that and light those smokes off and have the flag and drums going. And then when you get there, you can sit down and get your balti pie and start getting ready to sing.
One of the interesting things about it too, though, is that with how short notice there was for the season, with a rebrand, and with how little time there was to prepare, a lot of what's happening is very organic. And it started very small and really quiet. To be honest, not a lot of atmosphere. But what's been really rewarding about it is that everything that's going on there, none of it's forced. Things we just try in the stands. Some things catch on, some things don't. There were really no marches early on. By the end of the year, we were walking around walking through the forest on the other side of the jail fence with our flags and our smoke, and we've got drummers and yeah, you know what? There are other more established supporters groups by far. I mean, we're a year old in March, this group.
And a half a year of meeting in person.
Yeah, I mean, and so you're showing up and you have this void that was left by Generation 9, and it was a void. They were the atmosphere and the noise, and they were what was there. And that's a very challenging thing to replace, because if you start to force, exactly. And if you start to try to force it or try to manipulate it, it's just going to come off as false, I guess, as plastic. It's just not going to have that feel that makes it feel authentic and real.
I think that's a big lesson for the clubs, that they kind of needs to be obviously you want to be friendly with the club and you want to do whatever, but you still need to have your own little space away from, because at the end of the day, there is going to be a time when you're going to be critical. And I feel sometimes here in Halifax that we've almost gone too far, where the supporters groups are in tight with the everything in Halifax has been organic too. Trust me, it's been two or three people sitting in a pub and creating this whole supporters group of privateers and all that kind of good stuff. But I feel sometimes there's a bit of it. There's not enough criticism sometimes of the club and what they're doing. And I think that's something that you guys need to be kind of maybe careful of, is that Angus is a great person and he's doing whatever, but you still need to have that little bit of a gap between yourselves and the club itself. So
totally agree.
So I mean for away games, do you guys have a particular bar that you go to, or Do you just go over to your house, Josh, or what do you guys do for away games?
My house is usually the after home game party. I live pretty close. I live pretty close to the stadium. But for Hamilton, again, like there's a couple of bars. We haven't had an established a bar for ourselves yet. There hasn't been enough people to really go for away days to be able to warrant that kind of thing. But we do parking lot beers again before the game there. We have a spot across the stadium that we go meet up before and walk over. And then like in Ottawa, we just started, like we've only played Ottawa 4 times-ish, I think, that we could go to games. So the away days, I think most of us only went to one of them. So these are all things that we're going to approach next year to try to establish these sort of culture for the supporter group.
We've reached out to a few establishments and so on too, like places around the area. The hard part was restrictions on, restrictions off, restrictions on, restrictions off, trying to guarantee attendance. And again, the York region geographically is really spread out. Like it covers a lot of distance. So and you have somebody like Ronan who's all the way up in Barrie, and you have people all the way downtown Toronto near the water, and spread all the way in between. So it's difficult in the way that like you would think about, a pub in the UK or Ireland where everybody's walking distance. You know, the club's away on the road and you all just kind of show up because you can walk and you can stumble home at the end. So a lot of it was virtual, to be honest. And it's an interesting tie into your comments about the connection with the club, because there is a struggle there to be close to the club and have that relationship, but have enough space to do your job as a supporter, which is to be critical when you have to be, because they've been incredible. Like we essentially have done virtual pub days when the club's been on the road, and we've had Angus on the calls. We've had, people from head office on the calls. We've had,
pitch side viewing warm up.
Yeah. Pitch side viewing warm up. Roger Thompson joined a call. We've had, we just recently had a call around the draft, that Angus was on. Martin Nash was on the call. New signings were on the call. So the club is very, very accessible, very connected, but we have, I think, created a space that's ours. We kind of do have a sort of no club employee rule in some of the chat spaces we have, which is only fair because people need to be able to voice their feelings and opinions in a way and get some feedback before they bring that out there, and be able to feel if they want to vent because they don't like something that the club's done or said, and without, worry about that reflecting negatively on them or affecting that relationship. But I think we've struck, the balance has been struck so far. We'll see how that goes as we grow and the club grows,
But it's, you're right though. Like, I mean, like when you get, the thing is, like when you work for, like, the clubs, when you work for them, obviously you've got not only a vested interest, but like you feel probably passionate about it. And then when you hear somebody like bad mouthing or having a criticism, you take it very personally, I think. And I think that's a kind of dangerous thing too, and I love the fact that you're trying to kind of identify that kind of gap that needs to be there. So, for the club itself, to speak, like, not to be critical, but, they are in a space with bigger clubs. Like, do you guys have any recommendations you think that the club needs to do a little bit better to bring more people into the fold, as it were?
I definitely do. I live pretty close to the stadium, and there's a huge population of immigrants in the area that I live in. That's very close. The Driftwood Soccer League, which has produced national team players, which is like a charitable league, is based here. And I haven't seen the club really reach out to this direct area around the stadium. It seems like they either went too far north or too far south. So I think that a lot of the marketing should be more specific around the stadium, so that you can have people who can walk to the game. Because most of us are commuters. We have people coming from you won't understand the references, but like 2 hours away in Kitchener, or like an hour in Barrie, coming to these, and they have to drive. So you don't get the same sort of feel of being able to walk to your stadium and being able to like go past it when it's not a game day and go, oh, I missed it. I wish I could be there. So it's something that I really wish that they would sort of push in that area.
It'd be nice to see too. You've got, obviously here in Ontario, we have League One Ontario. And it's unfair to compare, an existing club going through a rebrand in a pandemic with new people with a club that's launching and doesn't really have to spend money on the pitch or on facilities yet. So, you'll see some of the clubs that have launched in that league where downtown cores have advertising and flags up and that sort of thing. And again, it's easy to say when you don't have player salaries yet. You haven't spent a penny on football. You've just spent your money on branding. But there is a lot of people who support this club, including myself, and believe that with the transit that exists in Toronto and with the focus and the idea of there is a subway station that is like literally
Across
30
the street.
seconds across the street from the stadium. It lets out right there. The fact that you don't see a presence within that transit system, whether it's advertising space there, to let people know it's there, and especially in the core around Vaughan, I think it's a miss. I mean, I'm not a marketing person, so maybe there are studies that have been done that show that money is wasted, but, you know, there are still empty seats. So, you know, from my point of view, I feel like you turn every stone over, not in theory, but in practice to see what the result is. Then if it doesn't work, then you know if that money's been spent poorly. But again, since the rebrand, we've had 2 interrupted seasons, one not at home at all. So what are you going to market at that point?
Yeah.
Right. And one where we didn't know if we were going to have a season at home. And then all of a sudden with the way the restrictions have been run, it's come on home, boys, start the year. And everyone's scrambling around going, what are the games? What are the dates? So, I mean, I sympathize with how difficult that would be to plan how you're going to run something like that. So we'll keep our eyes open on, we'll give them benefit of the doubt going into the season. We'll see what the results are like.
I feel like, you know, like just from talking to Angus myself and having him on the show and stuff like that, like I feel like he's very open to stuff like that. And I think that like if you guys, you know, if they eventually have like a sort of fan forum down the road, I'm sure they'll take all that kind of stuff on board because as you said, like they are very accessible and I think anything that's going to help them.
Oh, they've been wonderful to us and taking our advice and asking our opinion on things. It's one of the nice parts about this club and why it appeals to me versus like TFC or something.
I also think that's part of like what they should be selling too, right? You know, it's like, you know,
For sure.
if you're just 2 regular TFC fans, like, you know, how much does a big corporation that's in behind TFC actually give a crap about what the regular fan on the street, you know, whereas at least you guys, like, they have a vested interest to keep you guys happy because you're the ones who are doing part of the job for them by starting supporters groups and getting the club's name out there, right? So, like, and I think that'll probably come down the road where it'll be a fans forum and you guys can like give your inputs. It's kind of nice. I was talking to Angus actually about the call you were talking about on the draft thing and, your new signing Dan, I'm going to say his name horribly wrong, Obicare.
Yeah.
So I heard that he's already a legend without kicking a ball. I heard like everybody like thinks he's like the best person in the whole wide world. So what was it like having
on the call? Yeah.
He was very sweet.
It was a lot of fun having him on there. He was, the engagement level, like right away. And I'll tell you, I think this is a thing, like we, you know, on our socials, you know, we kind of did a visual summary of the off season so far, tagged a bunch of players and not even an hour later, Oliver Minutels messaged us, liked it and, you know, threw a welcome to the club out there and he responded, said he's excited and that kind of interaction from the players. Like, I mean, no one's directing him to do that. He's just been tagged in that and responded. And we get that from, again, not just the office, but the players. It's all there. And there's a few legends on the team. I mean, it's in that respect of their willingness to be there, and just engage with us, have conversations. You know, I'll tell the story. It's Capania, I think, right? Is how you say his name. He's a Vancouver loanee, and he spent a lot of the year on the bench, but there was this thing that grew out of the stands with, he has great hair.
Great hair.
I'm envious because I have virtually no hair left. But so he has this great hair. So one of our guys brings in an empty Head and Shoulders bottle and we start this song about subs and it's just basically that our subs are sexier than yours. And to the point where the players are running on the pitch or running out to warm up and you could see them waiting for it. Some of them are mouthing the words along to it as they sing to the subs coming on.
Yeah, they're getting ready to flick their hair.
Yeah. But credit to these guys. So Capania's a lone player and the guy that has the bottle and starts the whole thing, he trades him his shirt for the soap bottle or for the shampoo bottle that he had, the empty shampoo bottle.
That is amazing.
And that's the kind of fun stuff that goes on with it, right? Like it's that kind of interaction that you see that they're listening, they're acknowledging, they're engaging right from the side of the pitch. It's I don't know if you see that I don't have any experience with TFC, never been there.
No, you don't.
I don't know if you're going to see that kind of interaction there. I mean, it's that you feel that much a part of it. pretty remarkable.
I must say, like, that's through the whole league, I can honestly say. And I think a lot of it comes from, for a lot of the guys, it's almost like, not a last chance saloon, but it's like, they probably would have drifted off somewhere and they're actually having a chance to live a professional footballer's life. So I think they just want to soak it up an awful lot. Like Oliver Mintel is like a perfect example. I mean, like, he broke his leg really badly, like, could potentially have finished his career, and yet he's still going back to play football. So it's that's the beauty of the league in a way, that he's giving people like that, like, an opportunity to keep going, right? So.
And you have the local connections too. Like, I mean, we have a lot of players who are from in and around the York region area, and, they're all amazing. It's, you feel that connection because they are players from the local area. And, that's such a huge thing for a club. I mean, you see it in clubs in the UK and overseas where, a certain number 10 for Villa, who I won't mention, who was a legend partly just because of growing up with the club and being local. We have players that are like that are from the area, and that's, their local club, they call it that, and that's a big deal to them. So it's,
a certain supporter left his beer in a player's car. Or player's mom's car.
What?
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Yeah. It's great. It's something else for sure.
I love it. So you mentioned there that Martin Nash was on the call with you, and obviously that was one of the big moves over the this off season. So how did you both feel about Jimmy getting into the playoffs and then being asked politely to not come back this season?
It's a mixed bag for me. I like Jimmy. I think that he did very well for the time he was there, and like he'd done TFC 2, which I used to watch TFC 2 because I'm a weirdo. So it was sad to see him kind of go, but Martin Nash also was an incredible coach, and I'm very excited to see what he can do with these kids. And in my opinion, I think going for that youth level player that we're trying to do at York and have those sort of younger established people and try to build them up, I think Martin Nash might be a better fit for that. So I don't know. It was bittersweet. I'm sad to see Jimmy go, but I would welcome Martin Nash to come in.
I mean, Jimmy had the connection to the area. He was involved in founding of the club. I think those are difficult connections to cut off, and I think it goes without saying his place in the history of the sport in this country.
Yeah.
And so when you have a national legend attached to your club, it's always going to have a certain draw and pull to it. But I think we've also seen globally in the sport that there's a shelf life as a manager. And, I mean, how many clubs do you see it where, I mean, I'm not going to start comparing us to Chelsea, but I mean, you see clubs that are what's considered successful are competing at the top of the table at all levels and all quality of football. But if you're not getting where ownership wants to be, or they feel like you've plateaued, regardless of your CV and so on, it's changes will happen if they feel like it's necessary, right? So, whether it's philosophy or just results, I guess it's just part of the game. So as sad as it is, we got the future to look forward to, and we're excited about that as well.
I definitely think, as Josh said there, that Martin Nash, like he's part of the Foothills, and
exactly
worked alongside Tommy, so he has that kind of skill level of dealing with kind of young kids coming through. And like, I mean, your squad is like so exciting,
it always.
I mean, like, just the added bonuses of like a Max Ferrari coming through, and like Noel Wright and stuff like that. Like, I mean, it's incredible, like the players that you guys have. And I think there was a time during the season last year when you guys were just clicking on it, like it was kind of like really coming together, and then it kind of just tapered off towards the end of the season. Like, I mean, I think he was as bad as Halifax, like wouldn't win in the last 8 or something like that. And it was like Halifax and York were just trying their best not to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been part of the reasoning behind it. And I also think that you're looking at Ottawa right now, like they're bringing in players and they don't have a coach. So how many players is Jimmy actually bringing in himself, or how many is like the club bringing in with the idea that they'll fit a system? You know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting. I'd love to get Jimmy on the podcast and hear what his opinion, but he probably would never tell the truth either.
If Angus is
pretty sure
What's that?
I think Ferrari is Jimmy's boy because he's from Aurora.
Yeah. But I mean, I've talked to Max a few times, even on the side, like, you know, I really do get the impression from him that he sees the club as his local club. Like he really is proud to play for the club, whether Jimmy's there or not. But it's, yeah, and it is a young group. I think I think just energy level, just, you got young players who are suddenly playing full seasons. I don't think that the plan initially when Max came on board was that he'd be starting the entire year in his his first full year, his second year in the league. A lot of young players getting their feet underneath them and playing a full season. But I mean, as we said, with the access to people like Angus, obviously he holds stuff back, but he's been also fairly forthright in his philosophy and like how he approaches recruiting and where he looks and what those are. And I think you can see that there is a very calculated approach to what he does. And yeah, I think it's a difference from the star power of a big name manager to somebody who is breaking down numbers, analyzing what players bring to the table. I think that in a league at this level where you have limits in what you can spend, that's the approach that you should be taking, because you need to find the underlying results. You can't just go out and buy goals because goals are expensive. Yeah. You have to try and project those goals coming from somewhere. And so we'll see, but to me, it feels like the right approach in a league where you're limited with a cap and just your overall revenue stream limits that you can spend.
You look at like, Lucas McNaughton's just gone to Toronto. You're seeing Mo Farsi go down to MLS Next or wherever the hell it is they're calling it. Like, are you guys prepared for that? Like when a Mac Ferrari like leaves or
100%. I want that.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's growth for Canadian players, right? That's Canadian players getting their opportunity. And that's, and I think Josh and I had so many conversations about this, just one-on-one even, about where that balance is between recruiting talent, letting talent go, but the revenue the club and the league needs to be able to build the league to the point where it's not spending out of pocket, that it's actually spending money that it's generated.
There's a big danger because like in Ireland right now, there's a lot of the young talent going to Scotland, and there's like the lower regions in England and stuff like that, and the money that they're going for is not very much. And I think that's a danger the CPL needs to watch out, that they're not letting talent go just for the sake of it, to kind of, oh look, one of our players has gone to the MLS, and rather than making sure they're getting their money's worth. But I mean, like for you guys, to speak of your squad and stuff like that, like you're obviously going to have players here that were promised last year and this year, and they're actually going to be able to play this year, like Cabrera and the wonderfully named William Wallace. So are you guys excited to see these guys actually get to Canada and show you what they've got?
Oh, for sure. We've been waiting for them for a year or more. It's always exciting. One of the things that I think hindered us a lot was that we made a plan to have these guys here, and then they weren't there. And so that is a testament to Jimmy, that he was able to produce we were always mid-table result and not having his full plan available. So I don't know. Can't wait to see what they happen. I hope it works well with Martin Nash's philosophy. And now that they're already going to be here, whether it's going to mix with the new philosophy, we'll see. But I'm excited to see them.
It does get glossed over a bit that push to the playoffs with a young squad, but you also have players who were brought in last minute simply because they were available to fill those spots. They weren't the players that were necessarily first choice or scouted, and that's nothing against them, but to perform at the level that some of them did and contribute the way they did, and not to mention that squad to have that kind of a result to the season and to be in the playoffs for the first time, I think it gets dismissed and glossed over a little bit. That's quite the accomplishment on its own.
Yeah, I think so too. It's you plan at the start of the year for X, Y, and Z, and then everything is just thrown up in the air. It's very difficult to move your pieces around. But were you surprised that some of the players that left, as in like Alvaro and Julian Albrecht is gone as well? Were you surprised to see that those guys leave?
Albrecht, yeah. Rivero, no. I was surprised to see Engel leave. I'm a bit bummed by that, and then seeing him sign for Ottawa today, it makes it that much worse.
I think that there's a certain the thing is that again the transparency is sometimes there about again knowing the philosophy and understanding that it's not necessarily just about the player. It's about what the future plans are. It's about what the wage demands are. It's about, the thing we don't get to see is who do they have their eye on the background. I mean, goalkeeper's a pretty difficult position because it's obviously a make or break position, but, there's the whole idea of what they've scouted and what they've seen and what they're looking at and what their plans are from a cap point of view. And especially when you have that analytics behind it, there's going to be those changes that go on. Albright, I guess, a little bit. Alvaro, I mean, we didn't get a lot. The result, like, there wasn't a lot of output there, I mean, there was some energy and could come in and change a game, but you didn't, I'm sort of at a loss to say what we really got out of that. He's a great player. I mean, in terms of the energy change and so on and the history, but I don't know if we really saw much there. And
I think with him, I think sometimes you get blinded by the clubs where somebody's been at. So like there was a big Real Madrid connection. I think it was either his first or second game he scored a really good goal. And I think that kind of set like everybody's like, this guy's amazing, he's gonna do it. And it's a lot of pressure on you too to
absolutely.
And then obviously he scored that banger against us, which Chris and Austin still have nightmares about. But but it's like I think you're right. Like I mean, like I've watched him quite a bit actually, and it never kind of really seemed to
click. Yeah. Exactly.
It's the same like with Nate Ingham. Like I mean, like you had like one of the best keepers in the league, but then you also had like Nico, who's also one of the best keepers in the league. And I just don't think that's sustainable. Where you've got you want to have that competition, but I don't think you can have two keepers that are so close together that it was going to break one way or the other. And I think that
the sad part is Nate had probably his best year. I mean, some of the performances from him this year, and on top of that, and it's just that's the thing. And again, he's local. He's from like right near where I am. Like, I mean, it's tough. I think it's tough when they're local and they're connected to the community that way. And, but
it's too though.
That's true. It's true. But it's also that original roster.
Yeah, the original roster. Like 100%. I feel that, man.
He's a York Niner. So it's those are tough to see them go, especially when it's not like there's a decline there. The player's still really, really good. And, but
they've just rebranded the goalkeeper situation. That's all they've done. But I think though, I think on one hand, like having Nico in the background pushed him onto that, because he knew somebody behind him. But then when Nico came in, like it was unfair on him because I think Nate got injured. Nico came in and did amazing, and then he got picked as soon as Nate came back.
Yeah.
So it was kind of unfair a little bit on him. So it's kind of. Yeah.
And to be fair, Nico's social media game and like personality is next to none.
Absolutely.
And they've got a podcast based around them, so I mean it's kind of hard to get rid of the guy, right? It's like
exactly.
I was gonna say you do wonder though, like if there's a connection, because Nico was signed by Angus, Nate was there with Jimmy. It's difficult not to wonder, well, did Nico just keep getting dropped because Nate was Jimmy's boy? Like it's there's those are the layers we won't know. That's that supporter club separation. That's that little no man's land there, right? So
that's the stuff we need to find out. So
I know.
Try and get Jimmy Brennan out for a few points and try and drag the info out of him.
Well, from what I've seen, like Martin Nash seemed like a more approachable gaffer than Brennan was. Like the interactions I had as a supporter from day one with Brennan was much more minimal than even Martin Nash coming on now, and like you could ask him a question right away. Like, it was I don't know. It's good to see the future.
We celebrated every wave from the sideline like it was a goal. Every time we got a wave out of him, it's just like we might as well scored a goal. He's so
stoic,
in it, right? It's stoic and straight laced that you actually get a reaction out of someone like that. But he was there and accessible, but he definitely like his personality was not. It's not an outgoing personality.
Yeah, but when you're a legend, you kind of have to be aloof as well, right? It's that kind of Roy Keane thing, It's like don't talk.
Not when you don't have the fans, man.
Not when you don't have the fan base yet. Yeah, that's fair. The TFC you can do that, but when you're trying to draw fans in, but it
is what it is.
Yeah. So what's the plan now for you guys to get more members in? Like, do you have like a social media strategy? I know I saw you post some stuff today, which is pretty cool. And what's the plan going forward?
Yeah, I mean it's growing as we go, because as we sort of figure out where our space is and what our footing is. And in some cases, because this is just, it's just us on our cell phones doing things. There's the learning curve that comes with that, trying things, what works, what doesn't. We've got some stuff that we'd like that we'll probably put out there as we go along. We have talked about, for example, spaces on Twitter being an opportunity for us to try and interact and draw people in. So there's been some discussion about, taking advantage of that space, using that as it is. We're doing a Zoom call for the Canada match tomorrow. So it's sort of a virtual pub night for that. We were hoping to do an in-person pub situation and plan that prior to the restrictions coming back in. So, that was something we couldn't do, but at least we're doing that virtually. And then, as the season moves along, we're just going to sort of see how things work in the off season. I know we're going to plan some away day parties, some watch parties, that kind of thing, and try and make some connections with, again, some of these other clubs that are in similar leagues. That's where the whole Shelburne thing is. League of Ireland and Canadian Premier League, there's so many parallels there. You're playing in the shadow of a larger league. Obviously, League of Ireland's got history that the CPL doesn't have, but the parallel in terms of the fan base size and what you're trying to accomplish, trying to create space for homegrown talent, and then also give them a platform to move on into bigger things. So, we want to try and tie into that. So yeah, we'll definitely be out there, but it's certainly an evolving thing as you sort of learn what that space is.
I think a big thing as well, like the other supporters groups in the league are really approachable too. And I think that's something that, maybe you guys, I'm not telling you what to do, but it could be something you could tap in to see what they're doing, because at the end of the day, like, we're all here wanting this league to work, and having teams like Edmonton having 400 fans at a game, it's not sustainable. So we need Edmonton to work. We need York to work. So everybody's invested in making everything work. So I think that's one of the great things about the league is that, like, I'm a Wanderers fan, you're a York fan, but we're all collectively CPL fans. We wanted to,
yes, exactly,
because we're in the shadow of that bigger behemoth that's TFC and Montreal and Vancouver. It's kind of nice to be able to come together and have our own thing, right? So, so just to finish off, so if somebody is mad enough to want to be a York United fan, I'm not a Wanderers fan, where can they find you guys on social media? And is there a membership thing, like you pay for it, or just give you money just for whatever? Not
at this stage. If they message us over social, you can message us on Twitter, on Instagram. We're there. We're vocal all the time. Even the club has, they can reach out to the club and they can connect people with where they want to be. The best way to do it is to buy tickets and come on out to York Lions on match day, and come join us in the supporter section. We're really friendly, and we just want to have a good time over there and get more people involved. But yeah, they can reach us that way, social, or just show up, because we need the people there.
I feel like Angus is in behind your computer just with a board, like, telling you what to say.
Absolutely. You know what? All kidding aside, I will tell you this much, that is not the case. We are just as serious about this club surviving, especially in this market, as the people that work for the club are. Yeah, we do have great access to them, and they make suggestions, and we take some and we ignore some, but that's there. But the both parties have the same vested interest for different reasons. But at the end of the day, we want a club. We want this club to be here, and that's just, it's important to all of us.
And I must say, like, just to talk like a little bit more about what you said there about the season tickets and stuff, they've done a great job with, like, the pricing is incredible. It's so
amazing.
I was looking at it today. It's like, it's, if you have a young family and you don't want to pay the money to go see the Leafs or TFC or the Raptors, it's a pretty cheap day out, and it's a lot of fun, and you get to eat, like, some of the best pies in Canada as well, so
100%.
The best pie in Canada.
Yeah. Well, we have humble pie here in Halifax, and I don't know. We'll have to do like a taste test. So some of you will have to send me one of these pies, and I'll have to do a taste test and let you know. So
we'll definitely arrange that.
We'll make that happen.
So I really want to thank the both of you for taking some time to hang out and talk about the club that you so obviously love, and it's great to see, that, the roots are starting to take in York and in Toronto for, it's a cool little club, and I love the philosophy, like Angus is trying to build there, the young players and trying to better them and stuff like that. So yeah, so look for the season. Hopefully you finish outside the playoffs, because I'm an asshole and I want the Wanderers to win stuff. So
nice. There's no reason we can't both be there. There's some guys at the top that can take a break. They need a break from the playoffs.
We'll meet you at the finals. We'll meet you at the finals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I definitely think that Forge could take a break. They've been,
they can do more than take a break.
They've been doing an awful. They've all got jet lag. They've been traveling too much. Just take it easy. Just hang out at home for a season.
Poor Forge.
Poor Forge, yeah.
I really appreciate it. Take care of Ronan for me. Make sure that he doesn't get himself into trouble. And I look forward to seeing the Save the Tulsa Park tifo. Make sure it gets on TV. So hang it on the prison gate. That's all I ask.
Prison gate. Absolutely. And we'll reach out if we make it out there this year on a road trip. We'll make sure we reach out.
We'll definitely go for a few points.
Folks, please. Right, folks, please. Time to drink up, folks. Get out. Out to fuck.